decrease in forest coverage, rapid deterioration of land cover, and a depletion of water quality and quantity through destruction of catchments and underground aquifers. Honorable Speaker, increased scarcity of water resource is our core concern, making resource management more difficult and increasing the likelihood of conflict. Water scarcity also affects energy production and agricultural systems. Potential impacts include declining forest coverage, reduced water quality and quantity for domestic and industrial use, high water pricing, and increase in waterborne diseases. Honorable Speaker, Machakos County has 4 types of forest. That is gazetted state forest, trust land forest, community forest, and private forest. The county has 3 gazetted state forests. That is Eveti forest covering 364.07 hectares, Moumando forest covering 139.2 hectares, and Oone forest covering 96.6 hectares. Article 69(1)(b) of the Constitution provides that the state shall work to achieve and maintain a tree cover of at least 10% of the land area of Kenya. 6.1.2 Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries. Honorable Speaker, agriculture is the major source of livelihood in Machakos County, employing about 73% of the population and contributes approximately 70% of household incomes. Climate change limits development of the agricultural sector. In order to mitigate the effects of climate change on agriculture, the county has adopted the following options: water harvesting, dry planting, intercropping, use of drought-tolerant crop varieties, irrigation, value addition and use of indigenous knowledge in post-harvest handling and disease control. Conservation agriculture, and a collective action is selling. In poultry, for example, adaptation strategies include value addition, use of indigenous knowledge of disease control, and outsourcing for breeding stock. Honorable Speaker, although remarkable success has been achieved with the adaptation strategies, adoption rates are still low, and most of the underlying vulnerabilities have not been addressed yet. Like most of the counties in Kenya, Machakos County lacks a climate change policy, thus relying on national policies to deal with matters of climate change. 6.1.3 Trade. Honorable Speaker, the trade sector depends on products and services developed by other sectors of the economy. Adverse climate change impacts on such sectors will eventually impact on trade. 6.1.4 Fiscal infrastructure. Honorable Speaker, improved and expanded fiscal infrastructure is an important and necessary enabler of socio-economic development of the county. There is need to identify the adverse effects of climate change when developing county infrastructure facilities. Some of the approaches that can be used are climate-proof infrastructure and promotion of investment in infrastructure that supports transformation to a low-carbon economy while creating employment and reducing poverty. 6.1.5 Energy. Honorable Speaker, energy production and utilization is closely enacted with climate change. Machakos County possesses significant renewable energy potential, including wind, solar, biomass, and biofuels. 616, tourism. Honorable Speaker, the tourism sector is highly sensitive to climate change due to its close connection to the natural environment. Climate variability is causing negative impacts that could inhibit the positive contribution of tourism. Reduction in growth of plant and vegetable has often led to wildlife competing with domestic livestock and human beings for both food and water. 617, Honorable Speaker, human health has been affected adversely by climate change impacts in Machakos County. The county has high degree of risk from climate change sensitive infectious disease such as food or waterborne diseases, especially typhoid fever. Number 7, key issues highlighted in the policy. That is 7.1, low carbon climate change, resilient development. And then 7.11, enhancing climate resilience and adaptive capacity. Honorable Speaker, the policy indicates that key economic sectors are particularly susceptible to climate change impacts that threaten to undermine the county's recent and impressive development gains. Further, adaptive capacity is key to improving social characteristics of communities, households, and industry. It includes adjustments in behavior, resources, and technologies. Adaptive capacity is a necessary condition for the design and implementation of effective adaptation strategies so as to reduce the likelihood and the magnitude of harmful outcomes resulting from climate change. Honorable Speaker, in order to enhance climate resilience and adaptive capacity, the policy outlines the following undertaking by the county government of Machakos. 1, put in place mechanisms for sustainable utilization of natural resources to ensure climate resilience and adaptive capacity to protect the state of the county. Number 2, mainstream climate resilience into county government development plans, processes, and implementation. Number 3, ensure integration of climate change risk and vulnerability assessment in environment impact assessment and strategic environment assessment. 4, develop incentives to promote climate resilient actions among public, private, and other actors. 5, identify and implement priority adaptation across key social, environment, and economic sectors under the framework of a county adaptation plan. 6, promote public and stakeholders' consultation and participation, including vulnerable groups, to enhance adaptive capacity and climate resilience. 7, develop mechanisms to build capacity to mainstream climate change into disaster risk reduction and management programs. 7.1 and 2, towards low carbon growth. Honorable Speaker, Kenya currently contributes very little to global GHG emissions. However, a significant number of priority development initiatives outlined in Vision 2030 and the regular medium-term plans, in abbreviation is MTPs, will impact on Kenya's level of GHG emissions. It is worth noting that Energy sector is a crucial driver of economic growth. Fossil fuel-based electricity generation, consumption and increase in use of fossil fuel in the transportation sector contributes significantly to GHG emissions. The agriculture sector is the largest contributor of GHG emissions in the country, mainly from livestock, methane emissions, and land use change. Forests in Machakos are important for economic development and for environmental services. Forest cover in Machakos County currently stands at 3.4%, which can be attributed to deforestation and forest degradation in search for fuel, wood, charcoal production, and the creation of agricultural land. The transport sector in Machakos is dominated by road transport for movement of both people and goods. Growth of industrial processing in Machakos, though a relatively small contributor to GHG emissions, offers mitigation. Though a relatively small contributor to GHG emissions offers mitigation potential. A main source of emissions in the sector is the release of emissions from the cement manufacturing and the charcoal production. The mitigation potential of industry is important because the economic growth targets set by Vision 2030 and the MTPs aim to convert Kenya into middle-income economy with industry as a major contributor. Honorable Speaker, in order to attain low carbon growth, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the county government of Machakos. 1. Mobilize resources by developing a climate change fund. 2. Mainstream low carbon growth options into planning, procession and functions of the county government. 3. In view of strategic county interests, consider participating in voluntary emissions reduction programs. 4. Put in place mechanisms to develop and promote clean technologies in all sectors of economic development. 5. Promote the creation of green jobs by establishing an enabling framework for investment, creating business-friendly regulatory environments in key areas such as renewable energy, efficient transport, clean manufacturing, and sustainable agriculture. Mainstreaming climate change. That is 7.2. Honorable Speaker, Machakos County recognizes the climate change mainstreaming represents the best strategic approach to ensure that action on climate change results in meeting the overall policy objective of attaining low carbon and climate resilient development. Given that climate change affects fundamental economic, social, and environmental aspects of development, an effective cross-sectoral climate change response must place mainstreaming at the core of counties' climate change response efforts. Honorable Speaker, in order to mainstream the climate change, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the county government of Machakos. 1. Mainstream climate change into county planning processes, including development policies and the plans. That is CIDP, performance contracts, and the short to medium-term budget-making processes. 2. Develop a framework and the tools for mainstreaming climate change responses into county development planning and budget procedures. 3. Ensure that the county planning processes and the documents account for climate risk analysis and the vulnerability assessment and identify opportunities to build climate resilience and achieve low carbon development. 4, establish the institutional framework and build capacity to coordinate and enhance mainstreaming at the sector level. 5, put in place mechanisms linking climate change data and information with county planning processes. 7.3, research and technology. Honorable Speaker, research and technology will play a key role in climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies and interventions. The complex and dynamic nature of climate change and its impact requires Machakos County to expand and maintain systems for targeted continuous research and technology advancement. Empirical evidence is required to support policy, legislative, technological, and other innovations. Honorable Speaker, in order to undertake research and technology, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the county government of Machakos. 1, identify research and technology needs and promote strategic and systematic climate change-related research, impact and research and vulnerability assessments, technology developments, and diffusion. 2, put in place mechanisms to encourage and facilitate locally appropriate climate change technological development, including strategies to enhance and maintain human capacity, especially among the youth. 3, enhance the capacity of the public and private sector, civil society, and research institutions to develop and utilize technological innovations. 4, put in place to facilitate the integration of indigenous, traditional, and local knowledge into research and development, that is abbreviation R&D, and technology development. Put in place, that's 5, put in place mechanisms to enhance resource mobilization for climate change, R&D, and technology development. 7.4, education and public awareness. Honorable Speaker, public participation is a core value and principle of county governance. Increasing public awareness on climate change impacts and interventions can help facilitate the role of the public as a positive agent to reinforce climate change interventions. The mainstreaming of climate change into the function of various sector institutions and the county government is central to implementation of this policy. Honorable Speaker, in order to create public awareness, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the county government of Machakos. 1, put in place a strategy for identifying, refining, and disseminating climate change knowledge to the public and other stakeholders in user-friendly formats. 2, incorporate climate change knowledge into county-implemented public awareness initiatives, including civic education and extension programs. 3, collaborate and support the private sector and civil society in incorporating climate change knowledge into advocacy and public awareness raising programs. 7.5, knowledge management and access to information. Honorable Speaker, the county government of Machakos is aware of the need to gather and organize already existing data while generating additional knowledge and information to inform decision making. Honorable Speaker, in order to conduct knowledge management and create access to information, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the county government of Machakos. 1, facilitate facilitate establishment and operation of County Climate Change Information Hub facilitate establishment and operation of a County Climate Change Information Hub and clearing house to generate, coordinate, collect, store, and retrieve and disseminate reliable, high quality, and up-to-date data and information. 2, facilitate setting up of climate information hubs to collect primary information and act as dissemination points for knowledge and information. 3, put in place mechanisms for and undertake climate change knowledge and communication needs assessment in order to develop appropriate systems and processes for climate-related data collection. 4, develop a comprehensive communication strategy to enhance dissemination of timely, incredible, and reliable climate change information and research findings. 5, put in place mechanisms to gather, document, and promote application of traditional, indigenous, and knowledge and practices on climate change. 6, mainstream gender analysis into climate change knowledge and information management. 7, implement mechanisms to facilitate and support access to climate change information. 7.6, climate change governance and regulatory framework. Honorable Speaker, proper legislation provides a regulatory framework comprising vital components of climate change governance. To ensure good governance and a regulatory framework on climate change, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the County Government of Machakos. 1, put in place overarching climate legislation to provide a framework for coordinated implementation of climate change responses and action plans. 2, put in place a cabinet-level climate change committee to coordinate the mainstreaming of climate change into county sector plans. 3, put in place an appropriate institutional coordination mechanism with high-level convening power to enhance interior sectoral responses to climate change.
Intersectoral.
Put in place an appropriate institutional coordination mechanism with high-level convening power to enhance intersectoral responses to climate change. 4, put in place a technical institutional framework to guide policy and functional implementation of climate change legal obligations of the county government. 5, regularly review and amend relevant sectoral laws and policies in order to integrate climate change policy considerations and implement priority actions in respective sectors. 6, put in place mechanisms for public consultation and participation in climate change governance. 7.7, climate finance and other resources. Honorable Speaker, adequate and predictable financial resources are a crucial component in achieving county ambitions, climate change response objectives. Given the extent of projected climate change adaptation and mitigation needs in the county, it is important to ensure that all sources of finances can be mobilized. Machakos County therefore requires a suitable framework to attract and efficiently utilize climate finance. Honorable Speaker, in order to source for climate finance, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the County Government of Machakos. 1, adopt a climate finance strategy and establish an appropriate fund mechanism that enables implementation of priority actions for climate resilience and adaptive capacity and low carbon growth. 2. Explore possible avenues to attract internal and external climate finance, including through foreign direct investments and multilateral or bilateral funding. 3. Promote private sector involvement in climate finance opportunities through the introduction of incentives, removal of investment barriers, waivers, and creation of conducive investment, climate, and facilitation of access to finance. 4. Promote public-private partnerships in the climate change response. 5. Put in place a framework for coordination and monitoring and tracking sources, application and impacts of climate finance. 7, 8. Mainstreaming issues of gender. Honorable Speaker, Constitutional Foundation of Governance in Kenya. In Kenya embassies, equality of society. Equality is the goal that the county aims to achieve in all aspects of society interaction. Honorable Speaker, in order to mainstream gender issues in climate change, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the county government of Machakos. 1. Ensure that its climate change response is equally beneficial to both women and men and enhance gender equality and equity. 2. Undertake systematic gender analysis of its climate and of its climate change response through the collection and utilization of gender disaggregated data into relation to budgetary processes. 3. Ensure that marginalization and vulnerability arising from gender disparities are addressed at all stages of climate change response. 4. Adopt a gender mainstreaming approach at all stages of the climate change policy cycle, from research to analyze the design and implementation of actions. 5. Put in place mechanisms to ensure and enhance participation of youth in climate change governance and position them to take advantage of opportunities. 6. Undertake a systematic analysis of various special needs and ensure that planning and climate change responses mainstream participation and protection to persons with special needs. 7, 9. Climate change measurement, reporting, and benefit measurement. Honorable Speaker, all actions taken to respond to climate change should be measured, reported, and verified. The measurement, reporting, and verification, in abbreviation MRV, requirements are established under the UNFCCC. Honorable Speaker, in order to measure the report benefits on climate change, the policy outlines the following by the county government of Machakos. 1. Establish an integrated MRV framework for performance, outcome, and benefits of mitigation, adaptation, and climate finance actions. 2. Prioritize the use of existing MRV process, data collection, and information management systems to ensure efficiency in climate change-related monitoring, reporting, and benefit measurement. 3. Prioritize the integration of climate change parameters, data, and information required for MRV into the National Statistical Management System. 4. Enhance awareness and build up capacities of county entities to participate in the MRV process and the systems. implementation framework, that is 710. Implementation framework and the costs. Honorable Speaker, implementation of climate change policy Honorable Speaker, implementation of climate change policy priorities and other sections will require significant planning, including detailing the full cost to determine budgetary and other economic implications. Honorable Speaker, on implementation framework, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the County Government of Machakos. 1. Prepare and implement comprehensive, fully costed, and periodically reviewed climate change action plan under the framework of this policy. 2. Ensure that climate action plans for implementation of the policy are aligned with the regular MTPs of Vision 2030, CIDP, and ADPs. 3. Facilitate continuous consultations and public awareness across all sectors, interest groups and the public. 710 and stroke 2, monitoring and evaluation of policy implementation. Honorable Speaker, the County Government recognizes the importance of tracking implementation of climate change policy and evaluating related outcomes. It is crucial to prioritize vigorous and continuous monitoring and evaluation M&E of the policy. Honorable Speaker, in order to conduct monitoring and evaluation of policy implementation, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the County Government of Machakos. 1. Put in place mechanisms to utilize action plans and performance contracts as tools for the review and evaluation of inputs and results under this policy. 2. Collaborate with county sectors in setting up M&E procedures for this climate change policy. 3. Incorporate climate change indications into the county integrated monitoring and evaluation system. 4. Set up coordination mechanisms involving relevant stakeholders to undertake M&E of this policy over 5 years, over a 5-year interval in line with the Climate Change Action Plan, the MTPs of Vision 2030 and the CIDP. 5. Disseminate the outcomes of reviews and evaluation of the public stakeholder discussions and for county assembly debates and oversight. Seven, 10 and 3, resource mobilization. Honorable Speaker, the funding required for financing climate change responses under the policy will be mobilized from both internal and external sources. All sectors of the county government will be required to integrate climate change responses actions into budgetary processes to complement any external climate finance resources. Honorable Speaker, in order to mobilize resources, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the County Government of Machakos. 1. Allocate resources for climate change action in county budgetary processes by allocating at least 2% of its total budget for climate change mitigation activities. 2. Build capacity to mobilize, enhance, and absorption resources for climate change intervention. 5.
3.
Mobilize substantial level of climate finance and mobilize substantial levels of climate finance to fund implementation of this policy and the associated climate change action plans for internal and external sources. 4. Put in place mechanisms to attract and leverage public-private partnerships, PPPs, as a vehicle to mobilize resources and enhance private sector participation and low carbon climate resilient development activities. 710-4, collaboration and stakeholder participation. Honorable Speaker, Article 10 of the Constitution identifies public participation as a binding national value during the implementation of any public policy or decisions. The making and implementation of any law. The Count therefore recognizes the importance of building and sustaining partnership at all levels of society to ensure a collective ownership of climate change responses. The Count will continue to play the lead role in the strategic planning management of climate change responses. The Count government will foster participatory partnerships between itself and other public entities, the private sector, civil society, development partners, media, and international entities. Honorable Speaker, in order to ensure collaboration and participation of stakeholders in low carbon growth, the policy outlines the following undertakings by the Count government of Machakos. 1, put in place and operationalize a climate change public participation strategy. 2, ensure that the public participation enhances consultation and awareness of citizens, including facilitating equitable roles for women and men, persons with special needs, and the youth. 3, establish and sustain partnerships with various categories of climate change stakeholders, including development partners and sectoral departments. 8, observations and recommendations. Honorable Speaker, after the committee deliberations, Honorable Speaker, after the committee deliberations on the proposed Machakos Count Climate Change Policy 2019, the committee makes the following observations. 1, this is the first policy on climate change to be prepared and submitted by the Department of Water, Irrigation, Environment, and Natural Resources since inception of devolution. Let me speak. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. 2, that is the Count budget of financial year 2020-2021. The Count government of Machakos appropriated Kenya shillings 31 million for implementation of the projects on climate change. 3, that the policy is in good faith and will provide a framework to enable the Count government to implement national government policies on natural resources and environmental conservation, which may include but not limited to soil water conservation and forestry as envisioned in Section 10 of Part 2 of the 4th schedule of the Constitution. 4, the policy will help the Count to attain sustainable development goals. In particular, Count will attain goal number 13 on climate action by 2030 and directly or indirectly attain goal number 1 on poverty, goal number 2 on zero hunger, goal number 3 on health and well-being, goal number 6 on clean water and sanitation, goal number 7 on affordable and clean energy, goal number 14 on life below water, and goal number 15 on life on land. 5, Section 19(4) of the Kenya Climate Change Act of 2016 provides that a Count government may enact legislation that further defines implementation of its obligations under the Act or other climate change functions relevant to the county or such other related purposes. 6. The climate change requires a combined effort of all stakeholders. Currently, there are no concrete programs to empower the community who are the primary casualties of effects of climate change. 7. Climate change in Machakos County brings about both threats and opportunities. Whereas Machakos County receives a short rains during the month of October, November, and December, last year the county experienced higher rainfall during the same season. Eight, the county trust land forests have received little attention from the relevant authorities and are at risk of encroachment by human settlement, overgrazing and deforestation. Honorable Speaker, based on the proposed policy submitted by Water, Irrigation, Environment and Natural Resources, the committee makes the following recommendations. 1. The county government of Machakos should prioritize implementation of the Machakos County Climate Change Policy 2019. 2. Going forward, the Department of Finance and Revenue should provide for adequate funds to implement this policy. 3. The county government should align the climate change policy with other policies and regulations in order to allow sustainable development in Machakos. 4. The county government should partner with other stakeholders in private sector and other national government in implementing policies that have a bearing on climate change. 5. At the end of every financial year, the county executive committee member responsible for matters on environment should submit a report on the progress of implementations of climate change actions as provided in Section 19.5 of the Kenya Climate Change Act 2016. 6. Due to the dynamism in matters of climate change, and in order to enhance monitoring and evaluation of projects on climate change, the department should forward reports at the end of every quarter to the Assembly for continuous reporting and feedback. 7. The county government should put measures in place to empower its residents to participate in activities to respond and mitigate threats on climate change, as well as tapping the opportunities presented. 8. The county government should consider setting aside funds to support the residents to undertake activities geared towards response to climate change. 9. The county department responsible for matters related to climate change should ensure adequate involvement of the members of public by establishing climate change committees at the ward and village level. 10. The county government should develop policies to help the county to tap into opportunities presented by the enhanced rainfall. 11. There is need to fast-track the implementation of the county tree planting and tree planting campaigns in order to increase tree cover to at least 10% in line with Article 69(1)(b) of the Constitution. 12. The county government should reclaim trust land forests to curb the risk posed to the forest by uncontrolled human activities. 13. Before implementing the policy, the county department responsible for matters related to climate change should conduct public participation on this policy to create awareness and get the input of the public and other stakeholders. 14. the county government should introduce carbon credit resilience regulations to promote forest cover up to 10% of the total forest cover. 9.0, conclusion and acknowledgement. Honorable Speaker, the Assembly Committee on Environment, Lands, Energy and Natural Resources is grateful to the Office of the Speaker and that of the Clerk to the County Assembly for the support accorded during their meetings. I wish to express my appreciation to honorable members of the committee who sacrificed their time to participate in the discussion of the policy and preparation of this report, especially during this difficult moment of dealing with COVID-19 pandemic. Honorable Speaker, it is therefore my privilege on behalf of Environment, Lands, Energy and Natural Resources Committee to table this report on the Machakos County Climate Change Policy 2019 for deliberations and approval by this House. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The report is prepared by Mwikali Mwaniki, Senior Clerk, Assistant, Damas Masila, Senior Research Officer, and confirmed by the Chairman, Honorable Robert Kisini. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Robert Kisini, for that report. I now propose the question that this Honorable House discusses and approves the report of the Committee on Environment, Lands, Energy and Natural Resources on the Machakos County Climate Change Policy 2019. Honorable members, you may debate on the motion. Honorable Moses Mita.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for granting me the opportunity. My name is Honorable Moses Mita, representing Kangundo Central Ward people. I first want to applaud the Environment Committee led by Honorable Kisini for coming up with that report on a very long overdue policy, especially related to climate change. Honorable Speaker, everyone is a victim currently of climate change, and it is of essence that we also move with times. For a very long time, we have suffered from climate change, and this has been because of lack of policies on how to overcome the challenges which have come across with, along with this change of environment. Honorable Speaker, I want to appreciate this Honorable House because in our previous budget, that is 2020-2021, we passed some funds because there is a program which I think it's a donor-funded program fighting issues to do with climate change, and the program is shilling for a shilling. And in one of our sittings with the former CECM for water, she had pleaded that we include some amounts of money in our budget so that our county government can benefit from that program. And I'm happy that this House has passed, and I hope that the executive will implement and ensure that we benefit from those funds, that available fund. Two, I don't know whether the committee is aware that the national government gazetted some water catchment areas, and it happens that my ward was a beneficiary from that, even though, Honorable Speaker, I have not heard much from the county government on issues related to that. Kanzokea Hills was gazetted as a water catchment area, and as residents from Kangundo, and especially Kangundo Central Ward, we would want to know the measures which the county government has taken to protect that forest, Honorable Speaker, which I know very well you know about it, and ensure that we protect water catchment because of human activities. There is a lot of deforestation, Honorable Speaker. I think another water catchment which was gazetted, but it's subject for confirmation. I don't know whether my colleague, my neighbor, Honorable Musimi, is around, Kangundo North, was Kanzalu Hills, because also that was gazetted for as a water catchment area, and I would want to request the Environment Committee, Honorable Speaker, to make a follow-up and ensure that the areas which were recently gazetted as water catchment zones are taken care of. Honorable Speaker, issues to do with the climate change, and you had in between, it involved also agriculture, whereby I'm the chairman. It has really impacted negatively because our farmers are getting zero returns from their inputs. And I'm very sure if we embark on technology, we'll be able to succeed because we'll come up with the right crops, either for the animals or human feeds, so that we don't just plant for the sake of planting, but we plant the right type of crops which can yield at this time when we cannot predict the environment. So, Honorable Speaker, I support and I welcome that policy, and I hope we'll soon implement it and have it at work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kingori.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want also to congratulate the team which worked on the policy on environment. But what I want to add is we also need now, if we happen to adopt this plan, we need also to ask the executive to come with an act that will support those policies from each and every department, including agriculture, health, roads, which have been touched in the policy. Because all these things cannot be done on policy alone. We also need something to support the policies, which we have here in Machakos. Therefore, I want to ask each department to come with an act which will help us implement the policy of climate change, because everybody is affected by the climate change in our area. We are like the way Honorable Mita have said, the policy have just informed us on how to have ward committee members who will act on those ground things in the village. That's why the policy requested for village committee to get it through to see to it that the policy is implemented to the lowest level, meaning that we need also finance from the CC finance to fund those committees, depending on which sector they are. Like the way we have one in the Third Harvesting Act, this policy now can be acted upon if we only have, because now we have recognized that we need to have village and ward committees. They also need to be funded through their initiative so that we can meditate on climate change. Also, we also need to know that the 2016 National Climate Change also encourages us to have those world climate change committees so that everybody can participate on changing our climate, because climate is very essential to each and every individual, including animals and trees. Therefore, it's the high time we call upon all CECs to see to it that they adapt whatever had been recommended by the Machakos policy on climate change, to say that even cars, we need to see that people benefit from harvesting of climate change resilient, like what we call carbon emissions credits. So now we can benefit from those, from the World Bank and other areas. Also, we can also encourage to some point our country to introduce climate change carbon credit, so that each and every member now could feel that he owns the environment where he lives or where he is. When you plant a tree, you'll be paid for it. When you preserved climate, you'll be paid for it. So it's another form of getting jobs when we implement this policy very well. Secondly, our rivers are drying because we don't have weirs, and because of the slope, because of our slope areas. So we need also to know that these areas need to be guided by paying with what we are consuming in the environment. If we have industries emitting carbons in our river, they should pay for that. They should not be left alone to not pay. They should buy carbon to sustain the destruction they are doing by adding carbon resilience in our area and in our economy. So we shall be creating jobs to our youth. Mr. Speaker, I want also to touch on something else. That what we lack, we have so many policies and regulation and acts in Machakos, but what we lack is the regulations to enforce those policies and acts so that they can be implemented, including like a 2-1 of people living with disability. We have an act on it. And we also need to be that we have talked about it in the policy. It should also be enhanced and see to it that people living with disability get a space in those ward committees which should be looked upon by the county government. Therefore, everybody is touched here. And I think it's the high time we support this policy and also request other CECs to come with acts now supporting the policy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Anastasia.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My name is Anastasia Motuko, representing the Great Ward, Kibauni Ward. Honorable Speaker, I want to stand and support the report. It is a very elaborative report. Also, the recommendation of the committee is very clear that policy needs to be implemented as soon as possible, because when we talk about the climate, it's about the people's life. And as Honorable Honorable Whip has said, it is very unfortunate because sometimes people who are farming, they use farming like assuming. They don't have any knowledge, especially when we are coming the rainy season. We need to have information from the county government or national government, which is reliable. When people come to plant some crops, you are aware that the rain is short and the rain is long season. You see how you can do your farming. Because sometimes farmers, they were somehow very, very disappointed, like last season. People were planting, they misused their money, then at the end of the season, there was no rain. Another case, I want to say that, as I support the chairman of Environment, Lands and Natural Resources, that report is very clear, Honorable Speaker, that policy need to be structured in another way, that it's come up to the ground level, where people, they can be, maybe they can be selected through the county government or national, whatever the structure. But that committee needs to be trained to create awareness to the public within that locality or that ward. How will be the climate the next season? Because we need to work out about the mitigation of the global climate change, because we cannot underwrite the climate. Sometimes the rain starts earlier where people are not prepared enough. Sometimes it gets late, yeah? So we need to be very focused as honorable members and the great county of Machakos County, that people need to be trained about global climate change. We requested the executive or national government or whatever, even if it is a county, to create a board within our county, purposely to deal with the global climate change. The 3 departments, it's very key. Agriculture, lands, and water. These 3 departments need to work together to see how they can support the public or the Machakos people, and to do some capacity building, advocating global climate change. People need to be educated how they can plant indigenous trees which can survive where the area it is. Again, that board will go down with the executive, because we have 40 wards, and some of them, it is not similar to other. Like Kibaoni is very dry. People need to be educated to plant more trees. We have some dams, which is not seasonal. We have youth and women groups. They need to be supported and be educated to plant more trees, to get citrus. And at the end of the season, let the county ground to buy those citrus for the farmers and the groups, so that they can be empowered in another way. So, Honorable Speaker, I stand to support the report, and it is a very crucial report. County government needs to implement this immediately. And we come up with that policy clearly, and we have some committees from the ground level for the global climate change mitigation. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. I wanted to request the mover of the motion to respond, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, honorable members. Yes, we all agree that climate has changed. And a good example, honorable member, is that at a time like this, it is very sunny, it is very hot. We are in September. But now it's the time we are facing a lot of coldness, whereby we cannot even move from our houses. So I think that makes part of our climate change. Mr. Speaker, several members have raised their concerns, and more especially the whip. He has talked of Kanzokea Hill and the Kanzalu Hills, which were gazetted as water catchment areas. And I think, Mr. Speaker, for them to be included, for them to be gazetted, I think you are going to show us the way forward so that we can incorporate them. Honorable Kingori talked of the act to support the policy. We also look at guidance on how we can go about that one. Honorable Anastasia, thank you very much for your reaction. You remember I visited with my team Kibaoni, but for other purposes, and we found that there is a very big forest cover, which all the trees have been cut down, and I think this policy is taking care so that we can plant more trees and have a forest cover of 10%, as it was said. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I'm only requesting for members to support this policy so that we can move a notch higher. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Robert Kisini. I now put the question that this Honorable House discusses and approves the report of the Committee on Environment, Lands, Energy, and Natural Resources on the Machakos County Climate Change Policy 2019. As many as other opinions say ayes. Ayes. On the extended chamber, as many as other opinions say ayes. As many as the contrary opinions say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable members, I just want to put one or two comments before we adjourn. On the issue of the gazetted water catchment areas, the minute a forest area is gazetted as a water catchment area, it gets out of the commercial forestation. That means that you cannot get now the commercial forest. The people who come and they buy trees and they cut for timber. It is no longer a timber area. So that means that the trees which are there should be the indigenous type of trees, because you only plant the pine and the cypress type of trees in areas where you want to do harvesting of forests. But in water catchment areas, you put the indigenous trees. So you need to work with the Ministry of Environment, so they can be able to work with the Department of Forestry to ensure that those areas are reforested with indigenous trees, which will be able to enhance water catchment in those areas. While at it, I want you to check for me whether Iveti Hills has also been gazetted, whether it has been included as part of the water catchment area, because it is a very serious water catchment area and the residents do not wish it to continue being termed as a commercial forest farming area, because I think that Iveti Hill supplies all of Machakos with water, and if those trees go, then that will be a different story altogether. Looking at where we are coming from and where we are going, we talked about 10% forest cover. And when you look at the forest, the 3 gazetted forest areas, which were all done by the colonial government back then, they total to about 600 acres. And the total cover of Machakos land is 6,208 acres. So they actually had almost gotten already the 10% from those 3 gazetted areas as forest cover, which is what is required. So we need to ensure we add the additional 20.8 hectares to get to the 620.8 hectares, which will be 10% of our total land cover, and then ensure that we afforestate, we do afforestation of all those areas, because most of them have been depleted. Had we not stopped the process which was going on, this House passed motion stopping the felling of trees. By now, I'm very sure most of our forests will not be having anything on them. They'll be having very few tree coverage. The other thing which has been talked about here by Honorable Kingori is on regulations. Yes, we need regulations like yesterday. In as far as also amendment to acts, the Environmental Committee should have been looking at the Sand Harvesting Act. When you're talking about climate change and the effects of climate change, you cannot forget to look at the minings which are going on, especially sand harvesting and all those other things, which are also affecting our environment very negatively. Has this act been revised? Has it been changed so it can be in tandem with current realities? Do we have regulations regulating it? So those are the things we are talking about. The report highlights 73% of the population is in agriculture. 73%. Does our budget reflect that? How much do we put in agriculture? Yet our economy is based on agriculture. So there is need to align our money to where our people are. 70% of the incomes come from agriculture. So if 70% of the incomes are coming from agriculture, we need to ensure our budget is in line with that. And there is heavy investment on the agricultural sector, even as we go into industrialization, so that we can be able to sustain that sector. Finally, public participation. The Article 10 talks about public participation. And we have been doing it diligently. But unless public participation is followed by implementation of what the public is suggesting, then you are going to get more and more hostile receptions when you go back to the people to seek for them mandates to do various things. Public participation needs to be followed by implementation of what the public is requesting for. If you go for a budget, for example, public participation, and your people say they want a bridge here, next year you got public participation and they allocate funds. Again, you tell the bridge is not built. You want a bridge there. The third year, are they going to listen to you? They won't listen to you. They'll say that this public participation is becoming just a norm. So what we need to do is to ensure that public participation is followed keenly by implementation of the things which the public highlights during that public participation. Another announcement I want to make before I leave here is that there is a presser, which is going to be done by the majority leader and the NASA team soon after this. So all members of NASA are requested to attend the presser. With that, honorable members, this House is adjourned to reconvene again on Tuesday, the 22nd day of September, 2020 at 10 a.m. Enjoy the rest of the week and enjoy your weekends.